Have you ever felt like your prayers for financial breakthrough were hitting a brick wall? Like no matter how hard you worked or however much you prayed, you just couldn't seem to move forward. Well, I spent many years there, which I'll share more about in a minute. But what's fascinating is that that season of frustration wasn't just a waiting period, but it was actually the key to everything that came next. And so today on the show, I'm going to reveal why not quitting during your hardest financial season might just be the most important spiritual and financial decision that you will ever make. Hey, we are Bob and Linda Lotich, authors of Simple Money, Rich Life, and you are listening to the SeedTime Money podcast, and we are so glad to have you here. And we are in the tail end of a 40-week series where we've been sharing our 40-week checklist of the action steps, the strategies, and the biblical insights that we used to go from paycheck to paycheck living to reaching our biggest financial goal of giving away $1 million and living a life of what we call true financial freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I want to start this off really just by telling a little bit of my story, because I think sometimes we share, the highlights of our financial journey. And I don't think we spend enough time talking about the challenging seasons.
Yeah.
And
because the highlights are really encouraging, but I feel like, when I am down in the dumps and when I'm just depressed, I really like reading Psalms.
Yeah.
Because a lot of Psalms is down in the dumps too.
Yeah.
But then it always lifts you back up because you can see that there is an ebb and a flow and there's good and bad. And we can always find hope in God.
Yeah.
Even when it's challenging, really challenging,
Yeah. So when I was younger, before doing what we do now, where I'm a financial coach and podcaster and author and whatever else we do, I used to work at a financial services firm. And I worked there year after year. I went in there and just kind of like super ambitious and just like, I'm going to climb the corporate ladder.
And you are such an ambitious guy.
And I was naively ambitious at that point. Now I'm like ambitious with some, taking some hits and have some real world experience. But anyway, at that point, I went in there as, I don't know, maybe 18, 19 years old.
I'm going to climb this corporate ladder and I'm going to be at the top of it by the time I'm 30.
No, that was the goal, really.
Yeah.
It was a Fortune 500 financial company, so really, really big firm, like over 10,000 employees type of thing. And I'm like, I'm going to be successful. I'm going to go in there. I'm a hard worker. blah, blah, blah. And I didn't know what I didn't know.
Which is why, like I always say, I'm like, I feel like you're finally aging into your personality. Like you're finally there. Because the whole time I've known Bob, he's been like, yeah, I'm going to wear it. Well, not the whole time. But when I met you, you were like, yeah, I'm going to wear a suit to work every day. And,
As a teenager,
he's like got a whole plan. It's just hilarious.
Now I dress like a teenager. I'm 43 years old. It's funny how that works.
Switched a little bit, but you're still just as ambitious. It's just that your job requires sweatshirts and t-shirts
joggers
instead of
a bit more now.
A bit more.
Anyway, so I went in there and, first year I'm working hard. I'm like trying to get promoted and it's just not going real well. And anyway, long story short, I'm going to try to make this a shorter story. I don't want to make this too long, but I spent year after year after year there realizing how stuck I was. And I remember I was working there while I finished my 4-year business degree. And I remember like just thinking, well, I can't advance because I don't have a business degree. And once I get that, then I'm going to get all these promotions and, all these opportunities are going to open up for me. And I remember graduating, getting the degree, having it, and kind of telling my boss, and she's like, okay, great. Congratulations. Like, I don't care. You're not getting a raise.
She gave you a tap on the head. Was like, good for you.
And so then I'm kind of like, well, maybe I'll go find another department. So I started applying for all these different departments within the company. Again, thinking, well, now I have a 4-year degree and I have some experience or whatever. But just like position after position, like tons of interviews. And it just felt like everything was falling flat. And no one really cared about this degree, unfortunately. They cared more about experience in that department, of which, I was kind of in a very niche area where the skill set just didn't transfer over. And so
you were getting like certifications that you couldn't use anywhere else.
Yeah, just very much for this tiny little department. And so I remember like realizing one day, it's like, I have made a mess of a career, and this is probably 4 or 5 years in at this point. And I'm like, I thought I knew what I was doing, and I just have like pigeonholed myself. I've gotten myself trapped, and I pretty much need to like go backwards in order to, yeah, like there wasn't even a lateral move that was possible, and there definitely wasn't a
Right.
way of really advancing. And
Well, and painting the picture a little bit more is you went to college, took out student loans
yeah,
to work in this environment that you thought, man, they are going to just love me. I'm ambitious. I'll work hard, which is something that makes a lot of sense. Like logically, that is a good sound plan.
yeah,
But it just doesn't always work like that. And I think that's what was so shocking to you is that you're like, but I will work really hard, but I have taken the time to go get this degree, and I have taken all the certifications that I can to try and advance me in my career, and still I'm stuck. And that is really frustrating.
yeah.
And
We
yeah, like your willingness was there, you know?
so we went and we just watched Paul Blart with our kids
Oh my
this
gosh,
last weekend.
hilarious.
And
Mall Cop. Remember that movie?
I mean, and I get annoyed because well, if you've seen the movie, and you might remember this, and if you haven't seen it, you don't need to watch it. It's terrible. But
Watch it with your kids. They'll think it's funny.
whatever,
but
watch
yeah.
it with your kids. But
Your 10-year-olds. Okay.
but anyway, so Paul is this very eager mall cop who just does all the right stuff and is just works hard when everybody else is laying around, like has a good work ethic, like just is an upstanding guy. And they kind of like mock him for it. Like even the movie itself is kind of mocking him for it, which I
Right.
always hate. But I felt a little bit like that in that department where it's like I was eager to advance. I was taking classes. I was trying to learn. I was asking for opportunities to like. And meanwhile, a lot of my coworkers were just clocking in and clocking out. And I'm like, Bob, why are you working so hard? Why are you trying so hard? Like
Yeah.
you get it, you know. But that's the thing is that God saw that. God saw that. And I didn't know that then. I didn't know God was watching. I mean, whatever. I might have been able to say that, but I didn't feel like that at that point.
Right.
And so,
Well, you hadn't seen the fruit of it.
no, I was just in the middle of it.
Right.
But, you know, I just remember though that moment where I realized I think I'm in trouble here. And it was that point. It's like I started praying, and I kept praying, and then another year went by, and it's like nothing, and it's like another year goes by and nothing. And meanwhile, like I'm having people from the outside saying, hey, you know, maybe you should like try to apply at another company. And I would start to like move down that path, and I just sense the Lord's like, nope, I want you to stay here. And I'm like, oh, and
Why?
you know, so this combination of like feeling that there's no opportunity here, along with him kind of not letting me leave, felt just very, very challenging and very discouraging. And I ultimately reached like, I would say probably the lowest point, if not one of the lowest points in my life, just feeling so passed by, discouraged. Because again, like those of you who know our story, like when we started dating, we were sitting in our car as ambitious little youths, or whatever we were,
Yeah.
dreaming about this idea of giving away millions of dollars. So this is all burning in my head and my heart as I'm sitting here in this job, low paying job that I'm not good at, that I'm trying hard at, that I'm stuck in, and I feel like I can't get out of. And meanwhile, I'm just sitting there like, we're not going anywhere. I have these dreams that I feel like you put in my heart, God, but it's just not working out. And I don't know what to do. And I kind of feel like you're not listening to me anymore. Like nothing's happening. And and it's like nothing's happening for a week and months, and then it turns into years, and it feels like it's going to last forever.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt, you know. And I think I told part of the story in the book, but there was this point where after all of that time, like this kind of like light, you know, what's the term?
Light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, there's just like this tiny little light at the end of the tunnel where this opportunity across the hall in this other kind of related department that would have been a huge advancement for me, probably like 50% raise or something like that. This opportunity presented itself, this job presented itself that I actually had a decent amount of skill to do, and I knew the hiring manager.
Yeah, and interest.
Yeah, I was
Like
excited to do
yeah.
it, like everything. And on top of that, because I had this 4-year degree now, I actually was the most qualified person of anyone I knew applying for it.
Right.
So it's like I felt like I had everything going for me, and like so I was getting so excited. And so, I met with the hiring manager a couple of times, the interviews felt like they went good. And one day I remember sitting at my desk and getting an email, and I popped open the email. And as I read the email, it was like the biggest gut punch I've had in my entire life, because it was congratulating my coworker who sat down the hall for getting that job. And I felt, yeah, I felt like I was on a desert island, and there was a plane that had just flown by that I was waving at, had the smoke thing at, and I'm like, they see me, they see me, they see me, and then they just keep flying.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those moments in my life where I'm like, I felt like giving up.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even know what that meant, other than like kind of giving up on God and just being like, I'm done. Like I tried, I've been trying to do this the right way. It's just not working. Like I remember just being at that point of just, I feel like I just want to quit. I can't keep this going.
Right.
And I wish I could say that was the moment where it's like, but then I encouraged myself in the Lord, and then the next day everything changed. It
Yeah.
didn't, and I think I struggled and I worked through that, and I'm sure I was praying, but it didn't change right away. And it didn't, and honestly didn't change in the next year. But what happened about a year and a half later, I ended up getting laid off, which, in some ways, some people would think, all right, man, this story's getting worse. But actually, I remember feeling like this is actually a good thing, because I don't know that. Anyway, so it was kind of
No,
like,
and it wasn't good for everybody. I mean, there were a lot of people who were like, 2 years away from my pension being, whatever,
Yeah.
all that stuff. There was a lot of loss in that, but
well, and just a little more detail on the layoff. It wasn't just me. It was 2008. Our firm
right.
got bought out by another one, so our entire department just was unnecessary, and
Yeah.
so me and tons of my coworkers are all getting laid off at the same time.
Yeah,
But,
and it was rough. But for you, I mean, that's where it's just interesting how it all kind of depends on your perspective of, the thing. Because
Yeah.
for you were kind of like, you know what, this actually could be great because I've felt stuck there.
I felt stuck. I don't think I can go much lower than I am. And
Lay
even
me
though
off. Why
God,
not?
even if God won't let me out, it's like, all right, they're laying me off. So now they're kicking
They're
me
kicking you out.
out. So anyway, so I remember that, yeah, just kind of that interesting feeling of, all right, well, I'm getting laid off. But what was so interesting about in terms of this conversation we're having right now, and the challenge and the laborious, the pain and all this stuff, like, out of that, again, I'm shortening this story just for the sake of getting to the point. That's where God led me to start this business, and ultimately what SeedTime would become, and which ultimately, was the thing that he had for me to do. So even though in that job I did not feel gifted, I did not feel, I just didn't feel good.
You didn't feel good, yeah.
I was working hard, just not getting anywhere, he transitioned me out of that into this. And the reality is that all of that season, it's so clear to me, was preparation for this. And had I not gone through that, I wouldn't be ready for this.
Yeah.
For this next season they brought me in. And on top of that, like, it's so easy. Like, there's so many different ways in that season that I could have quit and taken it into my own hands. I could have just actually quit the job and went and found a job somewhere else in a different career path or whatever. I could have disobeyed there. I could have, or if I would have gotten that job that I so desperately wanted, kind of at the end where I felt like, I'd been passed over. Had I gotten that job, it would have been a huge pay raise, and it probably or could have been the thing that would have prevented me from ever starting this business.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and so.
No, I think it definitely would have stopped you from starting this business. And I think that's something really strong to consider, that sometimes it can feel like one thing is going on, but God is actually doing something else.
Yeah.
And you needed that in order to start the business, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was just an interesting thing. I mean, you listening, friend, I'm assuming that you can relate to some of that, and maybe it's not your job, maybe it's whatever, maybe it was years ago, maybe it's right now, but I think you know what I'm talking about when you're in this situation where you're just praying and you feel like you are not moving forward. And on top of that, the thing that we all, I think, are struggling with right now with social media is it feels like everyone else is moving forward and that everything else is going well for everyone else. And because we're
Right.
in a world just with the highlight reels, and that's all we're seeing. And so it's really easy to get discouraged in that situation, because it's hard enough when you feel like you're not going where you want to go at the speed you want to go, and feel like God's not answering and all this stuff. But it's really hard when you feel like everybody else is and you're not,
Yeah.
that combination. And that's exactly how I felt. But in that season, one of those verses I clung to that I didn't really understand was Galatians 6:9, where it says, "Let's not become weary in doing good, for the proper time we will reap we'll reap a harvest if we don't give up."
Yeah.
And I think that was the first time, and that hasn't been the only challenging season, but I think it was the first time where I really realized or saw that play out, because there was a disproportionate amount of harvest, should we say, in relation to the challenge, and that I had to avoid growing weary in.
Yeah.
So like the challenge was really hard, and that was a protracted long season. But if I would have known in the challenge what was around the other corner, man, that would have made it a lot easier. But God doesn't often do that. You know what I mean? That's part of the walk of faith, is that
Right.
we have to trust that he's faithful and he's going to see us through, and he's got something on the other side while we are in the midst of the furnace, or whatever metaphor you want to use.
Right.
Right?
And, I think the other thing to keep in mind is I actually don't believe that God puts us in a position to just spin our wheels.
Yeah.
I think that he always has a job for us to do. And that might be internal work, or it might be external work, meaning he's got a project for you that is a person that's a project for you.
Yeah.
And, I think the sooner we can lean into, God, what do you have for me in this? And sometimes it is just the endurance and the patience and the desperation of clinging to God and making sure that he is number one, and he is the one that you're relying on, and that you're not relying on something else, someone else to save you,
Yeah.
But I feel like he doesn't put us in a position of just spinning our wheels.
Yeah.
And
He's
so
always at work.
he's always at work.
And I think when we remember that, as hard as it is sometimes, it just makes it easier. And so I look at two notable characters in the Bible, and I think there's tons of examples of this, but Joseph and David.
Oh, yeah.
Both had those situations where had a vision of the future and then went so far backwards, either being in prison for year after year after year, or being
Joseph
chased
was
around
in prison for years.
being chased around by the king trying to kill you.
Right.
Like those are both situations where it's like there is no way this is ever going to work out how I hoped, how I planned, how I envisioned, how I feel like the Lord told me. Like, it's just not going to happen. Be
Right.
real.
Be real.
Be real. Like, you were in prison, accused of rape. Like, you're not coming out.
Right.
You're not going to be in that thing that, that vision that God gave you. Or David, the king is literally trying to kill you. You are running like a fugitive. Like, how are you going to become the king? Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I find that inspiring and helpful when in a situation that, hopefully none of us will ever be in situations that bad, but when something feels that bad and feels that hopeless, it's good to be able to look back and see what God did and see his character and see how he worked in the past,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that you have to do when you're in that phase, because I think in any aspect of your life, this is bound to happen.
Yeah.
In some aspect of your life, whether it happens with finances or not, I don't know. But like, we have been through several seasons of this with our finances and with other things. And the thing that helps is, I keep coming back to that scripture. It says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. We need them both. Like, we cannot, if we have the blood of the Lamb, but we don't know how to apply it, we don't know how to remember God's faithfulness, we don't remember, or we don't know how to act on the promises of God, where it says he will provide all of our needs according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. Like, if we can't do those two things together in combination, it's really easy to just stay where you are and to forget how faithful he is.
Yeah. So I think that's a great thing to do while you're in it. The other thing I think is worth doing, I'll give you a couple practical things to consider. So reframe the waiting period. Okay. So
Yeah.
instead of viewing it as a punishment, view it as preparation,
Yeah.
because that's what's actually happening. Because there's no way that God has you in that season and he's not doing something with you, but you have to allow him to. You know what I mean? You have to allow that heart change. You have to allow that direction that he's trying to give you. You have to obey those things he's leading you to do. One of those things for me was starting this little blog. And again, I'm so glad that I did that, because
Right.
I was so beat down with my career that I could have easily just been like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go sit and watch Netflix or movies all night, like, or play video games all night or whatever. Like, I could have easily done that.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really glad that in that he planted the seed that was the thing that was going to get me out. I had no idea.
Yeah.
It was 2007. How many people
Well, and
turn it into a full-time income? You know
right.
what I mean?
What was so cool about that too is I felt like it was something that was refreshing for your soul at the time. Like, you started the blog because you were just like, I just feel like I'm so beat down. I need something that's going to be, a creative outlet, or, just remind
It
me.
did provide some of that. Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
remind me that, or just something else to put my attention on,
Yep.
And I think that was what's so great about it, is it wasn't this big, like, okay, to follow these 12 steps so that you can start making a living there. It was just something that naturally flowed out of you. And I think that people often forget that. They think they have to have a super specific plan to kind of fall into what God's called you to do.
Yeah.
When really it's just what is naturally flowing out of you. He's already put inside of you the thing, I think. So David goes to defeat Goliath. He already knew what to do because he had been fighting bears and lions. Like the most incredible warriors of the time did not know how to defeat something that was much bigger and much stronger than them.
Yeah.
But David had been doing it all along. So he just walks up and is like, I know exactly what to do. And instantly, I mean, he took 5 smooth stones. He only needed 1.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is I think he had the preparation of taking what he needed, but he also had the power of God backing him so that he only needed 1 stone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty exciting. And I think that's why this blog turned out the way it did, was because you were just like, this is just what is coming naturally to me. I feel like it was almost part of your like Bible study.
Yeah.
And it naturally flowed out, and God was like, I'm going to put the wind at your back to do this.
Yeah. So that's the first one, or the second one, really. And the next thing is to maintain spiritual disciplines while you're in this situation. Because I think it's really easy to, and again, speaking from experience, to get worn down and to turn to escape mode with whatever that is, whether it's video games or shopping or social media or Netflix or whatever, anything you can do to escape. It's easy to do that when you're just beat down. And so obviously you don't want to do that. And more importantly, you want to maintain the spiritual disciplines, because we've noticed this as like this year has been a year of prayer for us, where we've taken some significant strides in our prayer life. And I think that there is this thing of, okay, I have this thing to do, so I'm going to pray whatever, half an hour before it or 5 minutes before it. And I think that obviously is good and that's beneficial. But there's something about being in prayer every day consistently, boom, 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 long before you get to that thing that you need to do. And I think that's a better way to approach prayer. And I think you can say that about everything else. It's like, as that quote goes, you don't build a roof you build a roof on a sunny day, or whatever the thing is. You change your roof on a sunny day. I'm butchering it, but you get the point. And so you want to do it before you need it. So you need to get built up in the word before you need it, before you're facing, whatever situation it is. And it's the same way with prayer. It's the same way with all the spiritual disciplines. So it's like you want to maintain them in your moments of weakness.
Well, and in your moments of strength.
Yeah, no, all of them. But
it's
the point is, yes, you want to maintain that, right?
Yeah. But no, you're right. Like, it is easy to just try and be like, I just have to get my mind off of this for a while. That is valid. The way you get your mind off of it is by renewing your mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we often forget, is we just go to the quickest fix, the thing that keeps us busiest. And it's the wrong thing, because it actually keeps us it keeps us down instead of lifting us up. Yeah.
So anyway, that's the gist of this episode. Like, I wanted to share this because I think this habit, I don't know if it's a habit or whatever, but this idea of not quitting in the midst of the trials is incredibly important to reaching whatever the thing is that God's laid on your heart. Because I don't know anyone who has watched God do miracles in their lives who hasn't gone through seasons like this. And so if you're going through that, you're in good company.
Yeah.
Because it's normal. Like, that's the thing. It's normal. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like you're the only one going through it. But it is normal. It's completely normal. And you can look all throughout the Bible, you'll see that pattern. You can look at the saints after the Bible, and you can read a lot of their stories. And it's just a very common thing that we see. It's like there's a reason, the Galatians 6:9 is sitting there. There's a reason that I don't know what God is doing in all those seasons. And I think he's doing different things in terms of refining and purifying each of us in those seasons. But man, just know that if you're in it, you're in good company and you're exactly where you need to be.
Yeah.
And God is not going to leave you there. But I can't tell you it's going to end tomorrow, unfortunately.
No, but I think it might not end tomorrow, but you can be in a place with God where you don't care anymore if it ends tomorrow. And I think that is what is so amazing about spending time with God, is when you turn your eyes on Jesus, everything else grows dim and you just don't care as much about the other stuff. And, I have found myself in this position more than once. Like Bob's telling the story from, 20 years ago. We've been in this position several times since then. I think this is a good story to tell, and it's a good example, but that was not the last time this has happened to us. And every time it does, I keep thinking, he's drawing me. He's trying to pull me close. And when I see it like that, it makes it not as hard.
Yeah.
It turns it into this, he actually just wants me for himself, instead of, why is this happening to me? It's like he didn't ever tell us that life was going to be easy.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not in the Bible. You can't find it. But he says things like, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Like, you're actually blessed to be mourning because you will have him to comfort you.
Yeah, that's good.
Like, you can see it as something that is just awful, or you can see it as something that is actually one of the best things that can happen to you in your life, because he is drawing you closer.
What's that verse say? Many are the afflictions of the righteous,
but the Lord will deliver him out of them all.
Yeah. I want to pray, overview if you're in this situation right now. So Lord, I just thank you for my friend on the other side of this microphone or speaker. And I just thank you for who they are and who you've created them to be. And I thank you for the work that you are doing in their life. I thank you that you are present, whether or not they have sensed your presence, whether or not they have felt your leading, whether or not they've heard your voice in a while. I thank you that you are faithful and that you are present in their situation. And God, I know that you are doing a work. And I pray that you would strengthen them to not grow weary in well-doing, to know with confidence that as they continue in with you and that they continue to lean in you, that you are going to bring them through the thing to the other side. God, and I pray that you would just encourage them in this moment. And I pray that they'd be able to see beyond the challenge and to be able to trust in you, that you are faithful, that you've been faithful to 1,000 generations, and you're going to continue to be faithful, that you're not going anywhere, that you are staying there right there with them, and you're going to see them through. And I thank you for how good you are, how holy you are. And I'm excited. I want to hear testimonies. So if you're going through this personally and this resonates with you, please come back and tell us. Mm-hmm. But Lord, I just thank you for them, and I thank you for the work that you're doing. And I pray that you would do the Ephesians 3:20 thing, Father, that exceedingly abundantly above and beyond all they can ask, think, or imagine in their life, in their finances, in their world. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, friends. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Yep.
We appreciate you. We love you. Send this to somebody who needs it. And that's all. See ya.
See ya.
This is what Kesha had to say about our book, Simple Money, Rich Life.
First and foremost, Simple Money, Rich Life. Y'all know that I've been reading this book, and hands down, I would go as far as saying this is probably one of the most monumental books in my life.
And did you know that you can get a copy for free?
You can get it on Amazon, but we so believe that the church needs this message that if you can cover shipping, we'd love to cover the cost of the book and send you a free copy.
All you need to do is go to seedtime.com/free to get yours.